The letter that would decide Letitia Falkner's marriage smelled faintly of violets. London, the 12th of May, 1817. Rain had polished the windows of Farringdon House to a dull grey, but inside the blue drawing-room every candle burned as if the family expected judgment rather than weather. Letitia stood alone before a half-circle of seated relations and allies, the anonymous French letter open in her hands. Sir Godfrey Tracel had summoned her because, as he put it, her education might finally prove useful. He had not mentioned that the page she was required to translate accused the Duke of Farringdon of loving a man. "Read it aloud," Godfrey said. His voice remained low and reasonable. He preferred cruelty that could be mistaken for patience. Letitia did not immediately obey. Her mother's silver double-lensed lorgnette hung from a black ribbon at her waist. She lifted it and examined the paper before studying the words. The sheet was costly quarto, smooth beneath her fingers, with a small watermark visible near the lower fold. Bell and Vane. A fashionable London stationer. Along one crease lay the pale residue of violet sealing powder, though no seal remained attached. The handwriting appeared hurried, but the unevenness was too deliberate. Someone had worked to disguise a naturally elegant hand. "Miss Falkner," Lady Ursula Hawkridge said from the chair nearest the hearth, "we are waiting." Letitia raised the page. The writer claims that His Grace formed an attachment during his military service. No one moved. Lord Rufus Hawkridge leaned against the mantel, one polished boot crossed over the other. His expression suggested boredom, but the signet ring on his right hand tapped once against the marble. Godfrey stood close behind Letitia's shoulder, near enough that she could feel his impatience without looking at him. She continued. "The attachment is described as one no respectable wife could overlook." A coal shifted in the grate. Ursula's gloved fingers tightened around her closed fan. "There is more," Godfrey said. Letitia looked again through the silver lenses. The next sentence troubled her more than the accusation. It did not sound intimate. It sounded constructed for an audience. The rhythm rose, paused, and resolved like dialogue prepared for a stage. It says, "A respectable marriage must close the curtain upon suspicion." Rufus's ring stopped tapping. Letitia lowered the letter slightly. "That is an unusual expression for private correspondence." "Scandal rarely concerns itself with elegance," Ursula replied. "This concerns itself with performance," Letitia said. Godfrey's hand came down on the back of the chair beside her. "You were asked to translate, not interpret. A translation without interpretation is only copying. Then copy the meaning and leave motive to those equipped to judge it." Letitia turned enough to meet his eyes. "You brought me here because I'm equipped to understand the language." For one instant, his face lost its practiced calm. Then he smiled. "And we are grateful." She finished the remaining lines. The writer implied that Henry Hawkridge had continued a private correspondence after the war and that only a swift, respectable marriage could prevent the rumor from reaching men whose judgment would affect his public future. The letter named no lover. It offered no date, no place, and no signature. It contained only suggestion shaped to resemble certainty. When Letitia stopped, Ursula rose. Her grey silk made almost no sound as she crossed the carpet. "Now you understand the urgency." "I understand that someone wants urgency. The distinction is less important than you imagine." Ursula took the letter from Letitia's hand, but Letitia did not release it at once. Their eyes met over the page. Ursula's expression remained controlled, yet something colder lived beneath it. Expectation. Not hope. "Why was I brought here?" Letitia asked. Godfrey answered before Ursula could. "Because Falkner Lodge cannot survive another quarter." The word struck with greater force than the accusation against the Duke. Letitia released the letter. "You told me the mortgage extension had been secured." "It can still be secured." "Under what condition?" Godfrey moved around the chair until he stood directly before her. "You will marry the Duke of Farringdon." The rain pressed harder against the glass. Letitia heard it with painful clarity, each drop a small sound against a house that did not belong to her. No, Rufus gave a soft laugh. You answer quickly for a woman who has not heard the sum involved. Letitia did not look at him. The sum doesn't alter the meaning of the word. Godfrey's patience thinned. If you refuse, the claimant may press the mortgage interest at once. Falkner Lodge will be lost. The servants will be dismissed. Your mother's remaining settlement will be consumed by fees and arrears. You control those accounts. I administer them, without ever allowing me to see the full ledgers. Ursula stepped closer. This need not become unpleasant. It became unpleasant before I entered the room. You require security, Ursula said. Henry requires a wife whose conduct cannot be questioned. The arrangement answers both difficulties. Letitia looked at the older woman. You want my name placed beside his until London decides that marriage proves something. Marriage reassures society. Does it reassure the people inside it? Rufus pushed away from the mantel. You ask a great deal for a woman whose house is about to be claimed. Letitia turned toward him. And you appear very certain it will be. His smile faded. Ursula lifted the letter again. A dispatch concerning Henry's domestic stability must reach a gentleman connected to the ministry before the end of the week. Delay would be interpreted badly. There it was. Not affection. Not family concern. A deadline. So the wedding must exist before the truth does, Letitia said. Godfrey's voice sharpened. The truth is that you have no better prospect. That isn't the same as consent. Consent is a luxury supported by income. The door opened behind her. No servant announced the man who entered. Henry Hawkridge, 7th Duke of Farringdon, stopped just inside the room. He wore a dark coat without ornament beyond the precision of its cut. His gaze moved first to the letter in Ursula's hand, then to Godfrey standing within arm's reach of Letitia, and finally to Letitia herself. He had heard enough to understand the shape of the room. Whose consent, he asked, has become a luxury? Rufus straightened. Ursula recovered first. Henry, this discussion was intended to spare you an indignity. Then it has failed. Godfrey bowed. Your Grace, we were explaining the consequences of delay. Henry's eyes remained on Letitia. Have you agreed to marry me? The question was so direct that for a moment she could not answer. No one else had asked. Even now, truth could cost her Falkner Lodge, the servants who depended upon it, and the last financial shelter her mother had left. She drew one steadying breath. I've been given a consequence, Your Grace. I haven't been given a choice. Something changed in Henry's face. Not pity. Recognition. He crossed the room and held out his hand to Ursula. The letter. Henry, you cannot mean to treat an anonymous accusation as evidence. I mean to discover why an anonymous accusation has been used to arrange my marriage without consulting either intended party. Ursula gave him the page. He received it by the outer edges, preserving its folds. He did not read it immediately. Who first brought this into the house? Godfrey answered. It was delivered to me this morning. By whom? A street messenger. He left no name. And yet within hours you had calculated a wedding. Henry glanced at the bell and vein watermark, then at the violet residue. Efficient. Rufus stepped forward. You know what happens if the ministry hears more. I know what happens when frightened people confuse haste with authority. Henry turned toward Letitia. Mr. Wren will attend tomorrow morning. He will examine this letter and the Falkner accounts independently. Godfrey stiffened. The trust accounts are not a matter for ducal interference. Then you should welcome independent confirmation. Henry folded the letter only along its existing crease and placed it inside an empty document case on the escritoire. He closed the case in full view of the room. It will remain here until Mr. Wren receives it tomorrow. Ursula's composure hardened. The announcement cannot wait indefinitely. It will wait one day. And the marriage articles? Henry looked at Letitia. No article will be signed until Miss Falkner has read it, questioned it, and written the terms she requires. Rufus gave a disbelieving laugh. You would let her dictate terms to a dukedom? Henry's gaze did not leave Letitia. I would let the woman asked to enter my household decide under what conditions she can safely do so. Godfrey opened his mouth. Henry silenced him with a glance. Tomorrow, he said, she writes the terms. At 10 o'clock the next morning, Letitia entered the library of Farringdon House carrying 3 pages of conditions written in her own hand. The room had been arranged to resemble a courteous consultation rather than a contest of power. One door stood open to the corridor. An elderly companion sat near enough to satisfy propriety, though her attention remained fixed upon her knitting. Mr. Wren waited at the long mahogany table beside Henry. Sir Godfrey stood near the hearth, while Lady Ursula occupied the chair closest to the open door as if she intended to control both the discussion and every possible exit. The document case from the previous evening rested before Henry. Its clasp remained closed. Letitia noticed that before she noticed anything else. Henry rose when she entered. Miss Falkner. He did not draw out a chair until she placed one hand upon its carved back, making clear which seat she had chosen. Only then did he move it for her. Mr. Wren opened a leather memorandum book. His hair was iron grey, his expression precise without being cold. His Grace has instructed me to answer every question plainly, he said. He has also instructed me not to consult Sir Godfrey before answering you. Godfrey's mouth tightened. A theatrical precaution. Letitia Saturday, then it should cause no difficulty if my uncle's accounts are correct. Henry's gaze moved toward her, and for the briefest instant she saw approval before restraint covered it. He lifted the document case. Before we begin, Mr. Wren will receive the letter. He opened the clasp in full view of everyone, removed the folded sheet by its edges, and handed it across the table. Mr. Wren examined the existing folds, the bell and vein watermark, and the faint violet residue. He placed the letter inside a fresh paper cover, wrote the date and the names of those present, then signed across the fold. The original remains intact, he said. I will keep it until its source is established. Ursula tapped her closed fan against her knee. The source is less important than the damage it may cause. The source may explain the damage, Letitia replied. Mr. Wren turned to a second set of papers. Falkner Lodge is subject to a mortgage interest and an unpaid claim. Sir Godfrey has authority to administer certain obligations under the trust, but he does not own the estate. Letitia kept her eyes on him. Can the house be taken this week? Not lawfully without notice, a demand properly made, and an opportunity to challenge the calculation. Godfrey stepped away from the hearth. A claimant may still press the matter. A claimant may attempt many things, Mr. Wren said. That does not make them immediate, proper, or beyond examination. Letitia turned toward her uncle. You told me the servants might be dismissed before the end of the month. They may be, if the debt is not settled. You also told me the extension had failed. It has not been completed. Who advised the claimant not to complete it? Godfrey did not answer. Henry's stillness sharpened. That question will be addressed when the ledgers arrive, he said. Ursula opened her fan. This inquiry may continue for months. The marriage resolves the uncertainty now. Henry looked at Letitia rather than at his aunt. I am prepared to advance the amount as a secured loan whether the marriage occurs or not. Godfrey stared at him. Ursula's fan stopped moving. Letitia felt the offer like a door opening onto another room in which she might still become dependent upon a man whose kindness she could not repay. No, she said. Henry's brows drew together. You refuse the loan. I refuse to exchange visible pressure for invisible obligation. The terms would be written. The debt would still shape every disagreement between us. You would know I kept my home because of you. I would know it too. He considered that without offense. Then what do you propose? Letitia placed her 3 pages upon the table. A marriage whose limits can be read before either of us enters it. Godfrey gave a short, contemptuous breath. You presume considerable authority for a woman without property in her own control. That is precisely why the authority must be written. Mr. Wren dipped his pen. Proceed. Letitia lifted the first page. Any income settled upon me is to remain for my separate use. It is to be administered by trustees who are independent of Sir Godfrey Tracell and not appointed solely by House Hawkridge. Ursula lowered her fan. You begin by insulting both families. I begin by ensuring neither family can spend what belongs to me. Mr. Wren made a note. The provision can be secured through the settlement. Letitia continued. Falkner Lodge is not to be sold, mortgaged further, leased, or transferred without my written consent and that of the independent trustees. Godfrey's colour changed. A married woman cannot simply invent powers the law does not give her. Then the settlement must establish them before I become one, Letitia said. Henry turned to Mr. Wren. Can it be done? Yes, with careful drafting. Then include it. Letitia moved to the second page. My private correspondence is not to be opened, withheld, copied, redirected, or answered by my husband, his secretary, his relations, or any servant acting upon their instruction. Ursula's expression hardened. Language of that kind presumes dishonor. Henry answered before Letitia could. It prevents opportunity. You are a duke, Ursula said. You cannot begin a marriage by accepting suspicion of yourself. Any man who objects to limits upon conduct he does not intend to commit is objecting to the limit, not the suspicion. Letitia looked down before the quiet force of that answer could move her more than caution allowed. I will also have a private chamber. No servant will report my movements within the house unless there is danger. No marital intimacy will be expected without my free consent. The companion near the door missed a stitch. Godfrey stared at Letitia as though she had spoken obscenely. Henry did not look away. Agreed. The single word carried no embarrassment and no attempt to appear noble. Letitia turned to the last page. All earnings from translation, publication, or written work will remain mine. Every manuscript written by me will remain my property unless I sell it under an agreement I have read and signed. Godfrey moved so quickly that his chair scraped the carpet. That clause is unnecessary. Henry's gaze settled upon him. Why? Because Miss Falkner's little literary efforts have produced almost nothing. Then the clause costs you nothing, Letitia said. Godfrey looked at her. The anger in his face was brief but unmistakable. Mr. Wren saw it. Henry saw it too. What have you written? Henry asked. Translations, Letitia said. French and Italian stage pieces. A few private documents. Some correspondence. Under your own name. No, or why not? The booksellers preferred a woman's labor without a woman's claim. Ursula's brows rose. You dealt with the theatre. My uncle dealt with the booksellers. I supplied the pages. Henry looked toward Godfrey. Who received the payments? I administered them on her behalf. Where are the accounts? Among the Falkner papers. And the manuscripts? Letitia asked. Returned. Every one. Godfrey hesitated. Everything that belonged to you. The answer was too carefully shaped. Letitia felt its meaning before she could prove it. That isn't the same as every draft. Henry leaned back slightly. Did you want payment, credit, or both? Letitia looked at him. No one had ever asked the question as though both answers might be reasonable. Both. As any worker would, he said. Then the settlement will protect both. Mr. Wren added the clause and a separate right allowing Letitia independent access to a solicitor of her choosing. He then read each provision aloud, replacing modern-sounding certainty with language that equity could enforce. Henry signed first. He placed the pen beside the document rather than into Letitia's hand. She lifted her lorgnette and read every line. Only after she had reached the final page twice did she take the pen. This signature means I accept these terms, she said. It doesn't mean the pressure never existed. Henry met her eyes. I understand. She signed. Ursula rose at once. The special license must be prepared today. The announcement must leave before the 17th. It will, Henry said, provided Miss Falkner receives the executed copy before we travel. Letitia handed the pen back to Mr. Wren. I also want an inventory of every manuscript Sir Godfrey sold or retained. You shall have it, the solicitor replied. Godfrey said nothing. That silence told her more than protest would have done. Later, after the library had emptied, a clerk carried the preliminary guest list for Kingswell Park to the household office. Near the bottom, beneath the names approved by Henry's secretary, another entry appeared in Rufus Hawkridge's hand. The name meant nothing to the clerk. Beside it were 5 words written smaller than the rest. Late arrival. Family corridor. After midnight. On the morning of the 15th of May, Letitia left London in a private carriage with the knowledge that her marriage had already been announced to men who had never asked whether she wished to enter it. The executed settlement lay inside a leather case beneath her hand. Mr. Wren had delivered it before departure, each page signed and witnessed, and Henry had instructed that her copy remain with her throughout the journey. Lady Ursula sat beside Letitia, her posture untouched by the uneven road. Henry occupied the opposite seat, while Letitia's maid rode beside him. Sir Godfrey and Rufus followed in a second carriage. The road to Kingswell Park required nearly 6 hours and 1 change of horses. For the first hour, no one spoke. London gave way to wet hedges, open fields, and villages where children paused beside the road to watch the ducal carriages pass. Letitia kept one gloved hand upon the case. Henry noticed. You may place it beneath the seat, he said. No one will touch it. I know. She did not move her hand. Knowing and trusting aren't always the same thing. His answer was quiet. No. They aren't. Ursula looked from one to the other. A marriage cannot flourish if every courtesy becomes an examination. Letitia turned toward the window. Then it is fortunate that ours is beginning with written answers. Ursula's lips tightened. At the posting inn, Henry asked whether Letitia wished to walk while the horses were changed. She did, but only as far as the small walled yard, with her maid nearby. Henry remained several paces away, speaking to the postmaster. He did not use the moment to force intimacy. That restraint disturbed her more than practiced charm would have done. She had prepared herself to resist arrogance, impatience, and entitlement. She had not prepared for a man who remembered the exact boundaries she had written and behaved as though they mattered even when no solicitor was watching. When they returned to the carriage, Ursula broke the silence. The dispatch left Farringdon House last night. Henry's gaze sharpened. What dispatch? Confirmation of the wedding. A gentleman connected to the ministry required assurance that your household would be settled before the week ended. You sent it before the ceremony. The license is obtained. The settlements are signed. Society understands that formalities follow decisions. Letitia looked at Henry. Did you authorize it? No. Ursula's fan remained closed in her lap. You would have delayed until gossip became policy. You had no right to use Miss Falkner's name before she became my wife. By tomorrow she will be. Letitia felt the old pressure gather beneath the courtesy. Her signature had changed the manner of coercion, not erased the people who had arranged it. Henry leaned forward. No further announcement leaves my household without the approval of both parties named in it. Ursula gave him a level look. Domestic stability has consequences beyond domestic comfort. Then the ministry may learn patience. For the remainder of the journey, she said nothing more. Kingswell Park appeared beyond a long rise, its stone front pale beneath the afternoon sky. Yews bordered the private chapel, and servants waited beneath the portico in ordered rows. Their bows were correct. Their curiosity was not. As Letitia crossed the entrance hall, 2 maids near the staircase lowered their voices too late. She's very calm. She'd have to be, after what they say of him. Henry stopped. Mrs. Bell, the housekeeper, turned with alarm. Your Grace, I'll address it. You will remind the staff that private rumor is not household duty, Henry said. No one is to be dismissed for repeating gossip encouraged by their betters. But it ends now. The maids flushed and curtsied. Letitia looked at him. He had corrected the harm without making servants carry the punishment for a scandal created upstairs. That choice reached her more deeply than it should have. In the state dressing room, Ursula opened a velvet case containing the Hawkridge sapphires. The stones were dark blue, heavy enough to announce rank from the rear of a chapel. These have been worn by 3 Duchesses of Farringdon, she said. They'll remind everyone that you enter an established house. Letitia touched the silver lorgnette hanging from its black ribbon at her waist. I'll wear this. That is not bridal jewelry. It was my mother's. A bride should look forward. A woman who forgets where she came from is easier to instruct. Rufus, standing in the open doorway, gave a soft laugh. You may find House Hawkridge more theatrical than instructive. Letitia closed the jewel case. Theatrical things are easiest to expose when the actor forgets his cue. His expression changed by less than a breath. Have you ever gone backstage at Drury Lane? No, a pity. One learns that an audience believes whatever the company agrees to show. Henry entered behind him. Then we should be grateful Miss Falkner has never depended upon an audience for judgment. Rufus bowed and withdrew. Later, as Letitia crossed the gallery toward her rooms, she heard voices through a half-closed door. Ursula spoke first. The dispatch has gone. By tomorrow, the ceremony will have done what was required. Rufus answered in a lower tone. And afterward? Afterward, appearances may be corrected. Not if she gives him a son. A pause followed. Letitia stopped without meaning to. Ursula's reply came colder. Then the separation must come before that possibility matters. Footsteps moved inside. Letitia continued down the gallery before the door opened, her pulse steady but her thoughts sharpened. She did not yet understand how they intended to create such a separation. She understood only that the wedding itself was not their final purpose. The next morning, the 16th of May, the private chapel bells began at 10. Letitia wore ivory silk without the Hawkridge sapphires. Her mother's lorgnette rested at her waist, its tiny engraved star hidden beneath her gloved hand. Henry waited before the altar in a dark coat embroidered only at the cuffs. The guests occupied the front pews. Ursula sat beside Rufus. Godfrey watched Letitia as though Falkner Lodge stood behind the altar with him. When she reached Henry, he did not take her hand. He held his palm open between them and waited. The clergyman glanced up. The silence lengthened just enough for every person in the chapel to understand that the choice, however constrained by circumstance, still belonged to her. Letitia placed her hand in Henry's. His fingers closed carefully. They spoke the vows. When the clergyman pronounced them husband and wife, nothing visible changed except her name. At the wedding breakfast, Lord Fenwick raised a glass and declared that the union would settle every uncertainty surrounding the Duke. Letitia set down her cup. Vows aren't proof of a man's private nature, my lord. They are vows. Fenwick reddened. Henry looked along the table. There'll be no further discussion of my marriage in those terms. Conversation resumed in cautious fragments. As Letitia left the room, Rufus came beside her. You speak bravely for a woman who knows so little of her husband. I know he dislikes cruelty disguised as wit. By dawn, you'll know whom he has truly chosen. She stopped. Is that a threat? It's an assurance that the night will be instructive. He bowed and walked away. Near the family corridor, a young page received a folded household order from Rufus's valet. The paper instructed him to admit a late messenger through the outer dressing-room passage after midnight. Beside the order stood a copied check mark resembling those used by Godfrey and initials meant to resemble the steward's hand. Don't trouble his grace, the valet said. The arrangement has already been approved. The page swallowed and placed the order inside his coat. That evening, when the household had quieted and the last candles burned low, Henry came to the bridal chamber door and stopped outside it. "May I come in?" Letitia looked at the room prepared for a marriage other people intended to break, then at the silver lorgnette beside the mirror. "You may." Henry entered and closed the door without turning the key. A moment later, from beyond the outer dressing room, someone knocked once. Silence followed. Then came a second knock, separated from the first by the exact measured pause of a man waiting for his cue. The second knock came after the same measured pause as the first, and Letitia felt the room change around it. The bridal chamber still held its low fire, 6 candles, and the faint sweetness of beeswax, but nothing in it seemed private now. Someone beyond the outer dressing room door expected to be admitted. Henry turned toward the sound without approaching it. "Were you told to expect a messenger?" Letitia asked. No, his answer was immediate. He stood between her and the dressing room, but not so close that she could mistake protection for confinement. "Before that door opens, there is something you should know." The knock sounded a third time. Henry did not raise his voice. "The rumor about me is false. It began because I chose to protect someone who could not have survived it as I could." Letitia watched the restraint in his face. "Someone from the army." A brief silence passed. "Yes. And you cannot tell me more." "Not tonight." He met her gaze. "But I won't use your body to prove anything to my family, to London, or to you. Whatever anyone expects from this room, I won't make you part of that proof." The words reached her through the fear. He had been married to her for less than a day, yet he had already understood the deepest indignity of the arrangement. They wanted her presence beside him to become evidence. They wanted intimacy to become testimony. "Then open the door," she said. "I would rather face what has been sent than wait for it to enter by another way." Before Henry reached the dressing room, a key turned in the outer lock. The young page from the family corridor appeared, pale beneath the candlelight, with the folded household order still in one hand. "The late messenger, Your Grace," he said. "I was told he had permission." Henry stopped. "By whom?" "Lord Rufus's valet brought the order. It bears the steward's initials." He held out the paper. Henry had not yet taken it when the outer door opened wider and a masked man stepped through. He wore a black evening coat cut too finely for a courier and too theatrically for a private visitor. Dark hair had been arranged close to his head, glossy under the candles. He advanced exactly 2 paces, stopped on a pale chalk mark near the edge of the carpet, and lifted his face toward Henry. "My midnight sovereign," he said, with the sorrowful projection of a man trained to reach the back row of a theater. "You promised I wouldn't be sent away when she came." Letitia's heart struck once, hard enough to make the room sharpen. She knew the phrase. She had written it 3 years earlier in the first draft of The Midnight Prince, then removed it before publication because the line carried too much ornament and too little truth. Henry's expression did not alter. "Who are you?" "You know who I am." The man drew a folded note from inside his coat. "You summoned me." He extended it but did not close the distance. From the corridor came hurried footsteps. Rufus arrived first in an unfastened coat, followed by Ursula, Godfrey, Lord Fenwick, and 2 other guests. They reached the bridal apartments too quickly for anyone who had been asleep. Rufus stopped at the threshold and allowed shock to enter his face. "Henry," he said. "What is this?" The masked man turned toward the witnesses with the precision of a rehearsed movement. "I was told the Duchess understood." Letitia crossed to the dressing table and took up her silver lorgnette. Her hand no longer trembled. Fear had narrowed into observation. Through the lenses, she examined the stranger's hairline. A pale ridge of stage gum showed above the mask. Inside his raised cuff, a small stitched number appeared against the lining. 17. On the sole of one polished shoe lay a streak of pale chalk matching the mark on the carpet where he had stopped. "Your Grace," Ursula said, "surely you will explain this." "I have never seen this man," Henry replied. Rufus looked toward Letitia. Then perhaps your bride has. The accusation arrived too quickly. It had been waiting alongside the witnesses. Letitia lowered the lorgnette. What comes next? She asked the masked man. He stared at her. Your Grace? The next line. You called him your midnight sovereign. What does he say in reply? Behind the mask, his eyes shifted. For one instant the performance failed. Then training reclaimed him. You came after the third bell, he recited. The dawn cannot divide what darkness crowned. Godfrey gripped the door frame. Letitia knew that sentence too. It belonged to an early version she had cut before the bookseller received the final copy. It did not appear in the printed play. More importantly, it did not appear in the forged note the actor still held. That line isn't written on the page in your hand, she said. The man looked down despite himself. You were taught it. Henry moved one step forward. Remove the mask. The stranger backed toward the corridor. I've delivered what I was paid to deliver. Rufus inhaled sharply. Paid? No one paid me. The correction came too late. Letitia raised the lorgnette again. Your hair is fixed with stage gum. Your coat carries a wardrobe number. You stopped on a chalk mark as though this carpet were a rehearsal floor. And you spoke a line from an unpublished draft. Ursula's composure held, but only just. This is absurd. No, Letitia said. It is badly staged. The actor turned to run. Rufus stepped aside before anyone asked him to. Henry caught the man by the forearm near the gallery entrance and stopped him without striking him. Cloth pulled sharply against cloth. The stranger twisted once, then froze under the Duke's grip. Who hired you? Henry asked. The man said nothing. Henry's anger was visible now, but it remained controlled. Letitia saw the witnesses leaning nearer, hungry for violence that would make the scene more convincing. Henry, don't. He looked at her. Don't give them the ending they came to see. His grip loosened enough to prevent a struggle without releasing the man entirely. Mrs. Bell, Henry called. The housekeeper appeared with the steward and 2 footmen. Take him to the steward's room. No one questions him alone. Send for a magistrate's officer. As the actor was turned toward the corridor, something slipped from his sleeve. A torn crimson leaf landed near Letitia's feet. She did not touch it. Clean paper, she said. And witnesses. Mrs. Bell brought a fresh sheet from the writing desk. The steward lifted the crimson fragment without placing his bare fingers upon it. One side bore the handwritten notation 3rd bell. On the reverse, beneath a smear of black pencil, were 2 initials. G.T. Godfrey saw them. The color left his face. Anyone could write 2 letters, he said. That is true, Letitia replied. Which is why no one here will touch it again without a record. Rufus began to speak. Letitia reached for the bell rope and pulled it. The summons rang through the bridal apartments and into the servants' hall. Keep every door open, she said. No one will decide tomorrow that this happened in secret. Henry looked at the gathered guests. You heard the Duchess. The title did not feel like a chain in his mouth. It gave her authority in a room designed to deny it. The steward placed the crimson leaf inside folded clean paper and signed across the temporary cover. Mrs. Bell and the page added their names as witnesses. The forged summons was taken from the actor and placed separately upon the writing desk. His black evening coat remained on him until he reached the steward's room, where it was removed and kept under the steward's key. Before the man was led away, Henry held out his hand to Letitia. He did not touch her first. She looked at his open palm, then placed her own within it. His fingers closed with careful warmth. Across the corridor, Ursula watched the choice between them as though it had damaged something more important than the failed scene. Letitia looked at the chalk mark, the forged summons, and the witnesses who had arrived before any honest alarm could have summoned them. This isn't a lover, she said. It's a performance. For the next hour, Kingswell Park remained awake while a rider was sent for the magistrate's officer. Hale was still only the masked stranger to everyone outside the conspiracy. He sat under guard in the steward's room with the black coat removed and placed in a locked press. Shortly before dawn, Rufus's valet arrived carrying a second household order. The paper bore a convincing imitation of the steward's signature and instructed that the prisoner be taken below stairs to change before examination. A young footman, exhausted and eager not to disobey, opened the door. In the laundry passage, the valet exchanged the stranger's clothes for a borrowed servant coat and led him through the service yard while the magistrate's carriage approached the front gates. By the time the false order was challenged, the actor was gone. The black coat numbered 17 remained behind. The actor had escaped, but his coat had not. At 7 o'clock on the morning of the 17th of May, the black evening coat marked with the number 17 lay inside the steward's locked press while Kingswell Park gathered in the Great Hall to decide whether Letitia Hawkridge had been victim, witness, or author of the scandal in her own bridal chamber. She entered in a high-necked morning gown, her wedding silk already removed and placed in her maid's care. Her silver lorgnette hung from its black ribbon at her waist. She had slept less than an hour, yet she refused the chair Henry had ordered brought for her until the young page and the footman who had opened the steward's room were given seats as well. Mr. Wren had been lodging at an inn near Kingswell until the executed settlement copies were safely exchanged. A rider had fetched him before dawn. He now stood beside the long oak table with his memorandum book open. Before him rested 3 separate packets. The torn crimson Q leaf lay inside the clean paper signed by the steward, Mrs. Bell, and the page. The forged summons carried by the masked stranger had been folded into another cover. The false transfer order used to remove him from the steward's room occupied a third. Each packet was sealed in wax, and every witness signed across the fold before Mr. Wren accepted it. The black coat remains where it was locked, the steward said. I have the only proper key. And the servant coat? Mr. Wren asked. It's missing, Mrs. Bell replied. It was taken from the lower passage cupboard. Henry stood beside Letitia, not before her. His sleeplessness showed only in the severity of his face. Begin with the page, he said. The boy gripped his cap between both hands. Lord Rufus's valet gave me the first order, Your Grace. He said a late messenger had permission to enter the family corridor. I saw what looked like the steward's initials and the check mark Sir Godfrey uses on household papers. Godfrey's jaw tightened. A copied mark proves nothing. It proves someone expected the boy to recognize it, Letitia said. Mr. Wren turned to the young footman. And the second order? The same valet brought it, sir. It said the prisoner had to be moved below stairs to change before the officer arrived. I thought the steward had signed it. The steward looked at the forged signature. I didn't. Where did you take the man? Through the laundry passage. The valet gave him a servant coat. Then he told me to fetch water. When I returned, they were gone. Rufus leaned against the end of the table. My valet carries messages for half this house. A frightened footman may have confused one servant with another. Then your valet may explain why both boys name him, Henry said. He can't, Mrs. Bell answered. He left the house before sunrise. A murmur moved through the guests. Ursula rose from her chair near the hearth. This display is accomplishing precisely what the intruder intended. We're repeating every humiliating detail before servants. Letitia faced her. The servants were used to open the doors. Their evidence matters more than our comfort. Ursula's expression cooled. A duchess must understand when silence protects her. Silence protected the man who planned this. It didn't protect me. Mr. Wren asked Letitia to give her account. She described the measured knocks, the chalk mark, the stage gum, the wardrobe number, and the line from the Midnight Prince. She spoke as a translator identifying corrupted text. The forged summons didn't contain the second line, she concluded. He knew it because someone rehearsed him from material that was never printed. Rufus pushed away from the table. Or because you taught him. The room went still. Letitia felt Henry move, but she answered first. Why would I choose a line that could be recognized by the one profession able to expose the performance? Because exposure was the purpose, Rufus said. You needed a scandal you could defeat. You needed the Duke to appear innocent and yourself indispensable. Godfrey stepped forward with the solemn air of a man forced into painful honesty. Letitia has translated stage pieces before. I arranged their sale when her circumstances required income. Several guests looked at her differently. She had been a bride under suspicion. Now she was a woman who had worked for the theatre, which some considered explanation enough. You arranged the sale, Letitia said. You also kept the accounts. For your protection. Did you keep the drafts too? Everything belonging to you was returned. That isn't what I asked. Rufus lifted one shoulder. There is the missing link. Her Grace wrote the words. The actor spoke them. The scene rescued a marriage intended to calm the ministry. Henry's hand flattened against the table. A woman's ability to write doesn't make her guilty of every use another person makes of her work. No, Letitia said, keeping her gaze on Rufus. And a duke's defense doesn't replace my answer. Henry looked at her, then stepped half a pace back. She raised the lorgnette. The man projected his voice instead of speaking privately. He stopped upon a chalk mark. He wore stage gum and a numbered costume. He answered a cue that wasn't written in the note he carried. If I had created the scene, I would have needed witnesses who arrived at the proper moment. She lowered the lenses. You arrived before any bell was rung. Lord Fenwick looked away. Rufus did not. A coincidence. Then you've had several. Mr. Wren closed his memorandum book. The objects and statements will be preserved. No guest leaves before providing an attested account. No servant is to be dismissed, threatened, or paid for silence. Henry added, and Lord Rufus's valet is to be found without alarming every posting house between here and London. Ursula turned toward her nephew. You'd place the reputation of House Hawkridge in the hands of a solicitor and theatre employees. I'd place facts in the hands of people who can identify them. By late afternoon, the great hall had emptied. The black coat remained locked in the steward's press, listed in Mr. Wren's memorandum but not yet moved. The 3 sealed packets rested inside his document case. In the small south drawing room, he examined the outer edge of the anonymous French letter without disturbing the original folds. Bell and Vane, he said. The watermark is from a numbered batch. The violet powder may also have been sold with it. Letitia stood beside the window while Henry remained near the open door. Can the purchaser be traced? She asked. If the stationer kept his ledger. I've sent a request that every entry from the first half of May be preserved until I return to London. You think the letter belongs to the same plan, Henry said. I think its language deserves comparison. Close the curtain upon suspicion isn't a natural private expression. A footman entered with an express from the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. The manager confirmed that My Midnight Sovereign and the line about the third bell appeared in no published edition of the Midnight Prince. The wording survived only in an unpublished rehearsal copy and, according to company records, the translator's earliest working draft. The manager invited the Duke and Duchess to inspect the prompt book and wardrobe ledgers in London. Letitia read the letter twice through her lorgnette. Then someone had access to the theatre copy or to my first draft. Your first draft was returned, Godfrey said from the doorway. No one had heard him approach. Letitia turned. Every page. Everything that belonged to you. The same careful answer. Henry saw the recognition in her face. You know that's false, he said. Letitia folded the theatre manager's letter along its existing crease. I know my uncle never wastes words unless the truth would cost him more. By the 18th of May, Kingswell Park had learned how to behave as though nothing had happened. Servants spoke only of meals, fires, and carriage lamps. Guests lowered their voices when Letitia entered a room, then raised them again after she passed. The black evening coat marked 17 remained inside the steward's locked press. Mr. Wren held the 3 sealed packets containing the torn crimson Q leaf, the forged summons, and the false transfer order. The anonymous French letter remained in his document case, its bell and vein watermark and violet residue preserved. Nothing had been lost except the borrowed servant coat, Rufus's valet, and the certainty with which several people had expected Letitia to remain silent. For 6 mornings, she and Henry worked in the small south drawing room with the published edition of the Midnight Prince open between them. Mr. Wren had made a careful transcript of the crimson Q leaf without breaking its seal, copying only what had been visible before the packet was closed. Letitia compared that transcript to the printed text line by line. "The published scene ends here," she said on the morning of the 20th of May. "The prince says, 'The night concealed me, but morning will judge us both.' Then the curtain falls." Henry stood near the window, one shoulder resting against the frame. "And the words spoken in our chamber. They belong to an earlier draft. I removed them before the final version was delivered. You remember them exactly after 3 years. I remember sentences I regret." A small change touched his mouth. "That seems a severe punishment for imperfect prose." "Imperfect prose often survives longer than its author wishes." "Then half of Parliament should live in terror." The answer surprised a laugh from her. It was brief, but it changed the room. Henry looked at her as though the sound had revealed something he had not expected to be permitted to see. Letitia lowered her eyes to the page before the moment could become too intimate. "Godfrey had the first draft," she said. "He also handled the payment and claimed he returned everything. But he never answered whether he returned every page." "No, do you believe he gave the wording to the actor?" "I believe he had the means. I don't yet know whether he acted alone." Henry glanced toward the sealed theatre manager's letter on the writing table. "Mr. Wren's note from London says Bell and Vane has preserved the stationer's ledger. But he cannot inspect the purchaser's entry until he returns. We could leave today and arrive with everyone saying we fled Kingswell before the statements were complete." Henry accepted the objection. That had become one of the most unsettling things about him. He did not agree to flatter her. He changed course when the reason was sound. A knock came at the door. The sound was ordinary, no more than 2 light taps, yet Letitia's body reacted before thought could intervene. Her breath stopped. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the book. Henry saw it. He did not cross the room. "Who is it?" he called. "Mrs. Bell, Your Grace." Only after the housekeeper identified herself did Henry open the door. Mrs. Bell entered carrying tea and a note from the steward. Rufus's valet had not been found. The posting houses along the London road remembered no man using his name, though one groom recalled a servant travelling alone in clothes too fine for his station. The young footman who had obeyed the forged transfer order had repeated his account without variation. "Thank you," Henry said. Mrs. Bell placed the tray down and withdrew. Letitia forced her hand to release the book. "I knew it was only a knock." "Your body did not." "My body has become theatrical." No, Henry remained beside the door. "It has become cautious." She looked at him. "You make fear sound respectable." "It is respectable when it has been taught by danger." He came no closer until she nodded toward the chair beside her. "May I sit?" "Yes." Henry took the seat to her right, leaving enough space that their sleeves did not touch. For several moments, neither spoke. The corridor outside remained quiet. "You said the rumor began because you protected someone," Letitia said. "A man in the army." Henry's gaze settled on the closed door. "Yes." "Someone under your command." He did not answer directly, but the silence confirmed enough. "There were letters," he said. "If they had become public, they would have destroyed him." "Socially? Legally? Professionally? Entirely?" The restraint in his voice told her the truth had edges he still feared to expose. "And you allowed people to believe the letters were yours." "I allowed them to believe what had already begun to circulate." "That is not the same as denying it." No, Letitia turned the lorgnette between her fingers. The tiny engraved star caught the light. Is he alive? Henry's face changed, though only slightly. I can't answer more yet. She heard grief inside the refusal and chose not to press. Then I won't ask for his name. He looked at her. You're entitled to know what governs your marriage. I am entitled to the truth that concerns me. I am not entitled to another person's private sorrow simply because society has made it useful. Something in Henry's expression loosened. You are kinder than I deserve. Do not confuse restraint with forgiveness. I won't. The silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt carefully occupied. Letitia closed the published book. Your silence may have protected him. It has also given Ursula, Rufus, and Godfrey a weapon they can sharpen without limit. I know. Do you? She held his gaze. You treat reputation like territory. You guard the border, decide what may be sacrificed, and assume that control will prevent greater harm. Henry's jaw tightened. That instinct kept men alive. Perhaps it did. But a household is not a battlefield, and I am not ground to be surrendered. He absorbed the words without defending himself. I do not know how to stop measuring danger before trust, he said. Then begin by noticing when you are doing it. His attention moved to her hand where it rested on the closed book. I did not expect to marry. Neither did I. I did not expect to care whether my wife thought well of me. The confession was so quiet that she nearly mistook it for thought. Warmth rose beneath her ribs, followed immediately by caution. Protection alone won't earn that. What will? Truth. Choice. The ability to hear an answer you dislike without punishing the person who gives it. Henry placed his hand on the table between them, palm upward. He did not touch her. Another sound came from the corridor, only a servant shifting coal near the hearth beyond the door, but Letitia's shoulders tightened again. She looked at Henry's open hand. Slowly, she placed her own within it. His fingers closed around hers with careful warmth. The contact did not demand gratitude. It did not claim to cure anything. He simply remained. Letitia listened to the house settle around them, to the distant movement of servants, to the rain beginning softly against the windows. Her breathing loosened. The corridor became a corridor again. Henry did not release her until she shifted her hand. That helped, she said. Then I'm glad. His thumb moved once against the side of her glove and became still. Letitia. It was the first time he had used her name without title or ceremony. She looked at him. The actor knew words that belonged to you. Whoever hired him stole more than a scene. I won't allow this inquiry to become only about my reputation. Then let me lead the theatre questions. You should. Not stand beside you while you speak for me. No, and not correct me if my answer embarrasses the ministry. Henry's gaze sharpened. You believe the ministry is already involved. Ursula needed the wedding announced before the end of the week. Rufus arranged witnesses in a country house. They won't stop at Kingswell. Henry released a slow breath. Then we return to London together when the statements are complete. Together does not mean under your direction. Understood. She studied him for impatience and found something more difficult to resist. Fear. Not fear of scandal. Fear that when the choice came, he would fail the standard she had placed before him. On the 25th of May, an express arrived shortly before dinner. The envelope bore the seal of the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. Inside was an invitation to inspect the rehearsal records and wardrobe books at a subscription gathering on the 30th of May. A second enclosure had no seal. It was a printer's proof titled The Duchess's Midnight Play. Beneath the headline, a facsimile of Letitia's handwriting accompanied the claim that she had hired the masked actor herself. One sentence read, "The marriage was designed to close the curtain upon suspicion." Letitia lifted her lorgnette. The phrase came from the anonymous French letter. Henry read it over her shoulder. Whoever prepared this had access to both. And to my handwriting. At the bottom of the proof, a printer's mark showed that publication had been scheduled before their expected return to London. Letitia folded the page. They wrote the scandal before they knew whether the performance had succeeded. Henry looked toward the dark road beyond Kingswell's windows. Then we reach London before they decide how it ends. By the afternoon of the 29th of May, London had already decided that Letitia Hawkridge had written the scandal in her own bridal chamber. The carriage had scarcely turned into the square before she saw printers' boys waving copies of the Duchess's midnight play beneath the windows of passing curricles. One crude illustration showed a masked man kneeling before Henry while Letitia drew back a curtain with one hand and held a pen in the other. The caption called her the Duchess who wrote herself a husband. Henry saw it at the same moment. His expression remained controlled, but his gloved hand tightened around the silver head of his cane. They had travelled nearly 6 hours from Kingswell Park, changing horses once while Mr. Wren continued separately with the sealed packets containing the torn crimson cue leaf, the forged summons, and the false transfer order. The black coat numbered 17 remained under the steward's lock until a witness transfer could be arranged. Nothing had been misplaced. The truth was intact. Letitia's reputation was not. A footman opened the carriage door beneath the gaze of two ladies waiting in a neighbouring barouche. Henry offered his hand. He did not close his fingers until Letitia placed hers within them. "We can refuse tomorrow's gathering," he said as they entered Farringdon House. "And let the pamphlet become the only account London hears. I won't ask you to endure a room arranged against you. I've already endured one." She looked toward the staircase, where a maid pretended not to notice the broadsheet folded beneath another servant's arm. "Tomorrow I intend to answer in the room they chose." Henry inclined his head. "Then you will lead." The words should have steadied her. Instead, she remembered the printer's mark on the proof and wondered whether he would still stand behind that promise when the ministry demanded a price. The answer began before the Theatre Royal gathering had even opened the following evening. In the reception room adjoining the subscription saloon, Letitia approached Lady Fenwick, who had praised the wedding breakfast and asked to see the Hawkridge sapphires. The woman glanced at the empty chair beside her, then placed her reticule upon it before Letitia could sit. "I fear this place is taken. No one occupied it." Letitia understood the gesture and turned away without apology. Behind her, another woman whispered, "She has courage, appearing after writing such a scene." A gentleman replied, "Or confidence. The Duchess who wrote herself a husband may now write herself innocent." Henry heard. His posture altered, but Letitia caught his sleeve before he stepped toward them. "Not yet," she said. "They'll say you silenced them because I couldn't answer." "You shouldn't have to answer filth." "I shouldn't. But I do." He stopped. That obedience cost him. She saw it, and the sight hurt more than easy protection would have done. The subscription saloon blazed with chandeliers and cultivated curiosity. Noble patrons gathered beneath gilt mirrors while theatre officers waited near a long table. Mr. Wren stood beside Letitia with his memorandum case. The original cue leaf remained sealed. No object would be displayed until the theatre records could be examined properly. Rufus arrived with Ursula and Sir Godfrey. He bowed as though they had met at an ordinary musicale. "Your Grace, London has been waiting for your interpretation." Letitia looked at the pamphlets moving from hand to hand. "London seems to have printed one already." Godfrey unfolded the translation sale receipt for the Midnight Prince. "Perhaps we should begin with what is not disputed." He handed it to the theatre manager. The paper recorded payment for an anonymous translation 3 years earlier, sold through Sir Godfrey Tracell on behalf of an unnamed lady. "You see," Rufus said, turning slightly so those nearby could hear, "Her Grace knew the unpublished language. She had motive to stage a scandal that could be exposed and defeated." Letitia faced him. "Why would I choose a line every prompter in London could recognize?" "Because recognition was the purpose." "Then why did the actor flee?" "Perhaps flight was also part of the performance." "And the false household orders." "Convenient additions." "And your valet vanishing before dawn." A flicker crossed his face. You accuse a servant who isn't present to answer. He left before anyone asked him to. The theatre prompter stepped forward at Mr. Wren's request. Ink marked 2 fingers of his right hand. The phrase "my midnight sovereign" doesn't appear in the published edition, he said. Nor does the line concerning the 3rd bell. Rufus spread one hand. Then the Duchess must have supplied it from memory. Letitia lifted her silver lorgnette and examined the facsimile of her handwriting reproduced in the pamphlet. This sample came from an early translation draft. The capital M is formed as I wrote it 3 years ago. I changed the habit later. Godfrey's composure did not shift. You gave me many pages to sell, and told me every draft was returned. Everything belonging to you was returned. Again, you choose the safer answer. Murmurs moved through the room. Ursula stepped nearer, her voice low enough to sound merciful. Letitia, no one condemns a woman for earning money in reduced circumstances. But secrecy naturally invites questions. Secrecy profited the man who sold my work. Suspicion began only when the same work became useful against me. A gentleman in a dark blue coat approached Henry from the far side of the saloon. Letitia recognized Mr. Pelham, a minor official connected to the Foreign Office. He bowed to Henry, then glanced at the pamphlet. Your Grace, I must speak with you privately. Henry remained where he was. You may speak here. Pelham hesitated. The proposed diplomatic appointment cannot survive an expanding domestic scandal. The ministry requires clarity before making its decision. Clarity about what? Letitia asked. Pelham looked uncomfortable addressing her directly. Whether the marriage is genuine. Whether the scene at Kingswell was contrived. Whether certain earlier reports concerning His Grace have substance. The room quieted around them. Henry's face closed in the way Letitia had begun to recognize. The border was rising. The earlier reports concern another person, he said. I won't discuss private letters. Then silence will be taken as confirmation, Pelham replied. And the accusation against Her Grace will remain unanswered. Ursula watched Henry with grave attention. One statement could preserve the appointment and separate you from whatever was done at Kingswell. Letitia turned toward him. She knew the truth had limits. She had already accepted that another person's private sorrow was not hers to expose. Yet she also knew silence was being arranged so that she alone would absorb its cost. Rufus addressed the room before Henry could answer. There is the difficulty. The Duke will not deny the older attachment. The Duchess alone knew the unpublished words. A staged rescue would serve them both. A woman near the mirrors whispered the phrase again. She wrote herself a husband. This time no one pretended Letitia could not hear. She raised the lorgnette, not because she needed the lenses, but because its familiar weight steadied her hand. I translated a play, she said clearly. I didn't write the man who entered my chamber. I didn't write the witnesses waiting outside it. And I won't erase my own work because thieves found it useful. The prompter shifted beside the table. There may still be a rehearsal prompt book in the archive. It should contain the earlier version if it survives. Then preserve it, Letitia said. Mr. Wren must be present when it is opened. The theatre manager agreed. It was not victory. The room remained divided, and the accusation had acquired the authority of print. As the gathering ended, Pelham placed a folded paper in Henry's hand. One sentence, he said. It may preserve the appointment until the records are examined. Henry read it. Letitia saw his jaw tighten. What does it say? She asked in the carriage back to Farringdon House. London's lamps passed across his face in intervals. Her Grace acted independently and without my prior direction. Cold settled beneath her ribs. That saves you. It denies that I hired the actor. And leaves everyone free to believe I did. I need time. Words don't become less dangerous because a duke hesitates before signing them. At 10:45 that night, Henry sat alone in his study with the statement before him. He thought of Letitia's hand resting in his at Kingswell, of her voice telling him that a household was not a battlefield, and of the appointment that could place real power within his reach. Then he signed. Mr. Pelham's clerk, who had been waiting in the hall, received the paper and carried it directly to the printer preparing the early morning sheet. Henry watched the carriage disappear into the dark and understood, too late to recall it, that he had chosen authority before trust. The statement appeared on the breakfast table before the coffee had cooled. Her Grace acted independently and without my prior direction. Letitia read the sentence once, then looked at the smaller line beneath it, where the editor explained that the Duke of Farringdon had therefore denied arranging the masked man's entrance at Kingswell Park. The paper did not accuse her directly. It did something more efficient. It cleared enough space for London to accuse her on Henry's behalf. A footman stood beside the table with his eyes lowered. Another servant entered carrying the morning correspondence, paused when he saw the printed sheet, and silently removed a calling card from the salver before presenting the rest. Letitia recognized the crest. Lady Fenwick had withdrawn her visit. No one said why. No one needed to. The silver lorgnette rested against Letitia's waist, cool through the fabric of her morning dress. She lifted it and examined Henry's signature as if sharper lenses might reveal hesitation inside the ink. The name was steady. The damage was not. "You may go," she told the footman. "Yes, Your Grace." His relief was almost painful. When the door closed, Henry entered from the adjoining study. He had not changed from the dark coat he had worn the previous night. Fatigue shadowed his face, but he did not pretend surprise at finding the newspaper before her. "Letitia." She folded the sheet along its printed column and placed it beside her untouched cup. "Did Mr. Pelham's clerk take this directly to the printer?" "Yes." "So you knew it would appear this morning?" "I knew it might." "You watched the carriage leave?" His expression tightened. "Yes." She had expected denial, explanation, perhaps the polished language of public men. His honesty left the wound nowhere to hide. "What did you believe the sentence would do?" she asked. "Separate me from the actor while the theatre records were examined." "And what did you believe it would do to me?" Henry looked at the paper rather than at her. "I told myself the wording was narrow. It was narrow enough to pass through you without touching you. Wide enough to leave me standing alone inside the accusation. I can issue a retraction after the first version has entered every breakfast room in Mayfair." "Yes." His answer came without defense. Letitia rose. "Why did you sign it?" "Because I believed the appointment would give me influence to protect the inquiry. I thought I could repair the damage once I had authority. Power later, purchased with my name now." Henry's jaw tightened. "That was not how I thought of it." "No. You thought of me as strong enough to survive it." Silence answered. She felt the truth before he spoke. "Yes," he said. "I used your strength as permission." The word stopped her anger from becoming easy. A lesser man would have blamed Pelham, the ministry, the printer, or the rumor. Henry had chosen. He knew it now. That did not undo the choice. "At Kingswell, you told me you measured danger before trust," she said. "Last night, you measured the appointment. I was the cost." "You were never a cost to me." "Then why am I the one paying?" His shoulders lowered. "Because I failed you." The simplicity of it hurt more than argument. Letitia looked toward the correspondence salver. 3 letters remained. One bore no return direction. Another had been opened by no one, as her settlement required. Henry had honored the written rule and broken the unwritten promise beneath it. "I will leave for Falkner Lodge this morning," she said. Henry's head lifted. "The inquiry is not secure. Mr. Wren has the anonymous letter, the Q leaf, the forged summons, and the false transfer order. The black coat remains under the steward's lock until witnessed removal. My presence beneath this roof secures nothing. Your safety matters." My safety is not improved by living in a house whose master has told London I acted alone. I did not say you hired him. You did not need to. You left the sentence unfinished and let society write the last line. He moved one step toward her, then stopped several feet away. Stay until the prompt book is examined. No, I am asking, not commanding. And I am answering. The word settled between them with the force of the settlement she had written. Henry looked toward the door. He could have closed it. He did not. Will you return? He asked. That depends on whether there is a marriage to return to, or only an arrangement that protects me when protection is convenient. Pain crossed his face before discipline contained it. I do not know how to repair this yet. Then begin without asking me to remain close enough to make your regret easier. Letitia left the breakfast room and went directly to her suite. Her maid had already heard the servants whispering, though she asked no questions. Together they packed the marriage settlement, Letitia's private correspondence, her translation notebooks, and the clothing required for several weeks. Letitia placed the silver lorgnette around her own wrist while the trunks were closed. The Hawkridge sapphires remained in their velvet case. So did every ducal jewel offered to her since the wedding. She would not carry ornaments that made departure resemble theft or forgiveness resemble purchase. Before leaving, she stood for one moment in the workroom Henry had ordered prepared after the settlement. A blank writing desk waited beside the window. No manuscript had yet been completed there. She removed the calling cards bearing her new title and left them in a neat stack. The settlement went with her. The cards did not. At 11, a private carriage waited beneath the portico. Her maid sat inside. A footman had been assigned to ride behind, no more and no less than propriety and safety required. Henry came down before the door closed. He wore gloves but no hat. The morning wind moved through his dark hair. He rested one hand upon the open carriage door without preventing it from moving. Mr. Wren will send every development directly to Falkner Lodge, he said. Without passing through your secretary. Directly. My letters. Untouched. Thank you. The formality wounded them both. Henry looked at her as though there were 100 things he had no right to say. I am sorry. Letitia believed him. That was part of the pain. Believing your regret isn't the same as trusting your next choice. I understand. Not yet. She held his gaze. You didn't lock a door, Henry. You made the whole city my prison. He closed his eyes for one brief moment, then stepped back. The carriage door shut. As the horses moved into the square, Letitia saw him remain beneath the portico until Farringdon House disappeared behind the turning road. The journey to Falkner Lodge took nearly 5 hours. Rain began beyond Richmond, soft at first, then steady enough to blur hedges and milestones. Letitia did not cry. She reviewed what she knew. The pamphlet had echoed the anonymous French letter. Godfrey had handled her manuscripts. Rufus had arranged household access. Ursula needed a ceremony before she needed a separation. Every cruelty had a structure. Only Henry's choice had felt personal. Falkner Lodge stood pale beneath the rain, smaller than memory and more honest than Farringdon House. The servants greeted her as Duchess, but the entrance hall still smelled of lavender polish and old paper. After changing from her damp travelling dress, Letitia went to the study that had belonged to her father. Her translation portfolio remained in the bottom drawer of the escritoire. The lock showed no damage. Godfrey had always possessed a trustee's key. She carried the portfolio to the desk and untied its faded tape. Later drafts, copied passages, and correction sheets lay where she remembered. The first folios of the Midnight Prince did not. They had been cut cleanly from the binding thread. Narrow stubs remained, each one marked with the original folio number. On the final stub, beside the severed thread, a pencil notation appeared in Godfrey's hand. The same cramped numbering style he used on the translation sale receipt. Letitia lifted her lorgnette and examined it closely. He had not misplaced her work. He had selected the pages he needed and removed them. She lowered the lenses. Somewhere between Falkner Lodge, Bell and Vane, and the Theatre Royal, her stolen words had been turned into a weapon. Henry's sentence had sent her away from his house. Godfrey's theft had shown her where to go next. She closed the portfolio and tied it again. "I won't return to London as a duchess waiting to be defended," she said into the empty study. "I'll return as the woman whose work was stolen." On the morning of the 2nd of June, Letitia entered the Theatre Royal through the stage door with her maid behind her, a footman carrying her locked portfolio case, and Mr. Wren walking at her side. No servant announced her title. No noble patron waited to study her expression. The corridor smelled of lamp oil, dust, damp wool, and old paint, and she felt more honestly received there than she had in the subscription saloon. The theatre manager met them near the wardrobe office. "Your Grace, nothing may leave the building without a written acknowledgement." "Nothing will," Letitia said. "I'm here as the translator whose work was taken, not as a duchess claiming privilege." The manager studied her, then bowed. "That may make the truth easier to find." The prompter led them into a narrow archive room where shelves rose to the ceiling. From a locked cabinet, he brought out a thick volume edged in faded red leather. The Midnight Prince was written along its spine. Letitia's pulse altered. She had never seen the prompt book, yet a sentence from it had entered her bridal chamber. The prompter opened the book beneath the window. One leaf had been torn close to the binding. Mr. Wren placed his memorandum book on the table and showed the witnesses the sealed packet containing the crimson Q leaf. The signatures of the steward, Mrs. Bell, and the page still crossed the fold. "I will open this once for comparison," he said. "The condition of both objects will be recorded before anything is moved." He broke the seal. The torn leaf remained exactly as Letitia remembered it, with Third Bell written on one side and the initials GT beneath black pencil on the other. The prompter held it beside the missing place in the book. 3 irregular fibers met. A black ink stroke continued from the bound page onto the fragment without interruption. "It came from this prompt book," he said. "There can't be another explanation." Letitia raised her silver lorgnette. The Q sequence above the tear read second bell. The scene following the gap began after the actor's entrance. "And the line?" she asked. The prompter read from the surrounding text. "My midnight sovereign. You came after the third bell. The dawn cannot divide what darkness crowned." Letitia lowered the lenses. The words were removed from the published version before the bookseller received the final copy. Mr. Wren wrote the comparison in a formal memorandum. The prompter and manager signed beneath his account. Then Mr. Wren placed the Q leaf into a fresh paper packet, sealed it with his own wax, and had all 3 men sign across the new fold. The leaf did not leave his possession. The prompt book returned to the prompter's hands and remained inside the theatre. In the wardrobe office, the keeper opened an issue ledger to the 15th of May. Black Evening Coat No. 17 had been released to Cuthbert Hale, actor, through a man calling himself Mr. Vale. Beside the entry appeared a notation that Vale had presented Lord Rufus Hawkridge's card when asked who would answer for the garment. "Do you remember him?" Mr. Wren asked. "I remember the card," the keeper replied. "And the way he said a duke's family would not quarrel over one borrowed coat." The original ledger remained at the theatre. Mr. Wren received only an attested extract signed by the keeper and manager. A second record showed that Sir Godfrey Tracell had requested access to rehearsal materials 3 weeks earlier, claiming he was preparing a private edition for the translator. Letitia looked at his signature. "He used my work to enter the archive after telling me every page had been returned." By the following afternoon, Mr. Wren's demand for Godfrey's retained trustee papers produced more. Among the documents were the missing first draft folios, still bearing Letitia's corrections, their cut edges matching the numbered stubs at Falkner Lodge. Beside them lay an English draft of the anonymous French letter. One sentence remained unchanged in both versions. "A respectable marriage must close the curtain upon suspicion." Bell and Vane's ledger completed the connection. A numbered batch of quarto paper and a box of violet sealing powder had been purchased on the 11th of May by Lady Ursula's London agent and delivered to Sir Godfrey's clerk. The watermark on the original French letter matched the batch. The stationer retained his ledger. Mr. Wren took an attested extract. The original letter remained in his case. After copies of the recovered folios were witnessed, the originals were returned to Letitia. She locked them inside the case and kept the key at her waist. The letter came first, she said as their carriage left the theatre. It forced the marriage. The actor was meant to break it. The pamphlet made me responsible for both. One design, Mr. Wren replied. 3 stages. And 3 people who believed my silence would keep them safe. On the 5th of June, a banker's attested extract traced money from Ursula's agent to Godfrey, then from Godfrey to the theatrical intermediary named in the wardrobe ledger. Part of the sum had been paid before the wedding. The remainder was released after the actor escaped. That evening, Letitia waited at Falkner Lodge for Cuthbert Hale. He had sent word through Mr. Wren that he would come at dusk. Dusk passed. Then darkness gathered over the orchard. A closed carriage appeared twice on the road beyond the gate and did not stop. At last, Hale emerged from between the trees in a plain brown coat, breathless and mud-spattered. A carriage followed me from the posting inn, he said after Letitia admitted him to the morning room. Her maid sat near the open door. Mr. Wren occupied the writing table. A footman remained in the corridor. Hale looked younger without the mask and false hair. Fear had stripped the Polish from his voice. Lord Rufus says he'll swear I devised everything. He says Her Grace paid me and I stole the coat. Did I pay you? Letitia asked. No, then tell the truth without improving it. Hale swallowed. Mr. Vale hired me. Sir Godfrey corrected the pronunciation and gave me the lines. Lord Rufus showed me where to stand. He said the guests would arrive before the scene ended. Mr. Wren's pen moved steadily. And Lady Ursula? I heard her behind a screen at Farringdon House. She said the wedding had to take place because the ministry wanted proof of stability. Then she said the marriage must fail before the Duchess could give His Grace a son. Letitia's hand tightened around the lorgnette. The words she had overheard at Kingswell now had their missing beginning. How did you escape? Lord Rufus's valet brought a second order with the steward's name copied on it. A young footman led me into the laundry passage. The valet gave me a servant coat and took me through the yard while the officer's carriage came to the front gate. Why come forward now? They withheld the rest of my money. Then Rufus sent word that if anyone was charged, I would stand alone. Letitia held his gaze. If you testify, I can't promise you freedom. Then what can you promise? That your statement will be written exactly as you give it. No title will purchase an alteration. Hale looked at Mr. Wren. Write it. He signed the deposition before an authorized witness brought by the solicitor. Mr. Wren sealed the original for the magistrate and retained an attested copy. The next morning, Ursula's offer arrived. She proposed that Hale alone be blamed, that the pamphlet be withdrawn, and that Letitia's position in society be restored if she ceased naming members of House Hawkridge. The letter ended with a familiar phrase. It is time to close the curtain upon this unfortunate suspicion. Letitia signed across the fold without answering and placed it directly into Mr. Wren's hands. Add it to the papers. By the afternoon of the 7th of June, the case no longer rested upon instinct. It had the prompt book, the resealed cue leaf, the wardrobe entry, the recovered folios, the stationer's account, the banker's record, the English draft, the hush offer, and Hale's sworn words. Letitia had just locked her original folios inside the study desk at Falkner Lodge when carriage wheels sounded on the gravel. Henry did not enter with the authority of a husband. He sent in his card and waited outside until Letitia gave permission. When he crossed the threshold, rain darkened the shoulders of his coat. In one hand he carried a signed withdrawal from the diplomatic appointment. In the other rested a sealed military packet. I've surrendered the office, he said. His voice held no expectation of reward. I haven't come to ask whether that purchases your forgiveness. Henry remained just inside the morning room until Letitia indicated the chair opposite her. He did not sit at once. Rain darkened the shoulders of his coat. Mr. Wren occupied the writing table near the open door. Letitia's maid sat by the window with her hands folded in her lap. No one could pretend this was a private reconciliation. Henry placed the signed withdrawal before Letitia, then drew a second document from inside his coat. "This is the retraction," he said. "It states that I signed words which exposed you to suspicion I had no right to place upon you. It also states that your conduct at Kingswell was truthful and courageous." Letitia did not reach for it. "Who may publish it?" "You may. Mr. Wren has my authority to send it to any printer you choose. You don't need my further consent. Even if I never return to Farringdon House." Even then. Only after he answered did she take the page. His signature stood at the bottom, steady as it had beneath the statement that wounded her. The difference lay above it. He blamed no clerk, no ministry, and no misunderstanding. He named his own choice. "Why did you sign the first statement?" she asked. "Not what you hoped to accomplish. Why did you do it?" "Henry Saturday, because I believed power gained later could repair harm done now. Because I wanted the appointment. Because I told myself you were strong enough to survive what London would say." His voice roughened. "I used your strength as permission to injure you." Letitia held the retraction between both hands. "That is the truth. It is not enough. No, and giving up the appointment doesn't purchase forgiveness." No, he met her eyes. "I placed office before truth. I let your name absorb the damage. I assumed I could decide how much you would bear and still call myself your protector. I am sorry." There was no elegance in the apology. That made it harder to dismiss. Letitia looked toward the sealed military packet beside his hand. "And that?" Henry rested his palm near it without breaking the seal. "The part one refused to tell you at Kingswell." He drew a breath. His name was Captain Martin Say. The name was new to her. Henry spoke it with the care one used around a grave. "He served with me during the war." Martin wrote private letters to someone he loved. If the letters had become public, he would have lost his commission. He might have faced prosecution. His family would have abandoned him. How did Rufus obtain them? A courier's case was stolen during a journey through Kent. Several letters were inside. Martin had once used my dispatch paper when his own ran out, and one outer cover carried my seal. Rufus understood the opportunity before anyone else did. He threatened Martin. He demanded money and resignation. Martin had neither wealth nor protection. Henry looked down at his hands. "I said the letters were mine." The room became very still. "You accepted the rumor deliberately," Letitia said. "Yes. My title gave society reasons to hesitate. The army preferred not to confront a duke without proof. Martin kept his commission. And Rufus? He kept enough of the letters to keep the threat alive. I recovered some, not all." Henry's expression changed. "Martin died of fever in 1814. Letitia lowered the retraction. "After his death, you could have denied everything." "I could have. But a complete denial would have required me to expose him. I would have had to produce the letters, name the man, and invite London to examine a dead officer's private life." "So you stayed silent?" "Yes." He touched the sealed packet. "This contains no intimate letters. Only military movements, dispatch dates, and hospital records. The later correspondence Rufus has circulated places Martin and me together near Portsmouth on a day when my regiment was outside Brussels and Martin was in hospital at Canterbury. The chronology proves those papers false." Letitia looked toward Mr. Wren. "Can the dates be verified without opening anything private?" "They can," the solicitor said. "Orders and hospital entries will be sufficient." Henry turned the packet so the seal faced Letitia. "You may decide whether it is used." She studied the unbroken wax. "The private letters remain private." "Agreed. The public may know that you carried a rumor to protect a deceased officer." They won't learn whom he loved or what he wrote. Henry's shoulders eased. I did not know whether you would say that. You should have trusted me enough to ask. I should have. She handed the packet to Mr. Wren without breaking the seal. Verify only dates and movements. Return it to His Grace when you are finished. I will, Mr. Wren said. Henry watched the transfer. There is another reason I came. Letitia waited. When I signed that statement, I became the kind of man I believed I had opposed. Rufus used Martin as a shield for greed. Ursula used you as a screen for succession. I used your strength as cover for ambition. His voice remained low. I cannot undo that by losing an office. I can only stop choosing for you. Letitia felt the truth settle where anger had been. It did not erase the wound. It gave the wound an edge she could finally see. We found the prompt book, she said. The Q leaf came from it. Godfrey entered the archive under my name. Bell and Vane's ledger ties the anonymous letter to Ursula's agent. Hale has given a sworn deposition. The banker's record traces the payment. Henry's gaze sharpened, but he did not interrupt. You built the case without me. I needed to know I could. And now? Now you may stand beside me if you can do so without taking the words from my mouth. I can. You won't revise my correction for diplomacy. I won't. You will allow me to say that our marriage began under pressure. Yes. And if I choose to remain at Falkner Lodge after the hearing? Pain moved across his face. The settlement, the retraction, and your rights remain unchanged. Letitia studied him. Henry placed his hand upon the table, palm upward. He did not reach across the distance. She remembered the chapel, the corridor at Kingswell, and the portico where he had let her leave. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers with careful warmth. They sat without speaking. The contact promised no pardon. It promised only that neither of them would decide its meaning alone. I am still angry, she said. You should be. I don't trust you as I did before. I know. But I believe this. His thumb moved once against the side of her glove. Letitia rose. Henry released her at once and stood as well. He made no move toward her. That restraint became the final proof she needed for this moment, not for forever. She crossed the small distance herself and put her arms around him. For one startled heartbeat he remained still. Then he held her with quiet care, one hand between her shoulders, the other resting lightly at her back. He did not tighten his arms when she drew away. There was no kiss. Letitia wanted the embrace to remain exactly what she had chosen it to be. The public correction will be read by me, she said. In my own words. It will. A footman appeared at the open door with a sealed letter. The hand on the cover belonged to Lady Ursula Hawkridge. Letitia opened it before the witnesses. Ursula announced that she would attend the forthcoming benefit subscription at the Theatre Royal and there, before noble patrons and the press, end the imposture that had disgraced House Hawkridge. Letitia folded the letter. She still believes the stage belongs to her. Henry looked at the withdrawal, the retraction, and the woman standing beyond his reach. Then she has misunderstood who will speak. On the 8th of June, Letitia returned to London carrying the pages that had nearly destroyed her marriage. The original folios of the Midnight Prince rested inside a locked case beneath the opposite seat of the Falkner carriage, watched by the footman who had accompanied her from Farringdon House 1 week earlier. Her maid sat beside her. Henry rode in a separate carriage behind them, not because distance was required by propriety, but because Letitia had not invited him into hers. When they reached Farringdon House after nearly 5 hours on the road, Henry did not come to the carriage door until Letitia had stepped down. "Where do you want the case taken?" he asked. Not where should it be taken. Not where he had arranged for it. Where she wanted it. "To the workroom," she said. "No one opens it except me." "Understood." The footman carried the case upstairs while Letitia kept the key at her waist beside the silver lorgnette. The Hawkridge sapphires remained untouched in their velvet box. Her calling card still lay where she had left them. Nothing in the house pretended that her return meant forgiveness. Henry had ordered no welcoming dinner, no flowers, and no family gathering. He had prepared separate rooms and left the connecting door between them locked from both sides. In her workroom, Letitia watched the case placed inside a cabinet whose new key had been given only to her. She opened it, counted every folio, then locked it again. The cut edges matched the numbered stub she had left at Falkner Lodge. The pages had travelled once, under her authority, and now rested where no trustee, husband, or secretary could reach them without permission. That evening, Mr. Wren brought the first amended draft of the marriage settlement. The work took from 9 to the 14th of June, but Letitia refused to let it become another long display of masculine explanation. She required precise changes. Translation earnings remained for her separate use. Every manuscript, working copy, correction sheet, and publication right belonged to her unless she sold it by an agreement she had personally read and signed. The workroom and its cabinets were placed under her exclusive control. She could consult an independent solicitor without household approval. Falkner Lodge remained protected by the original provisions. These rights continue whether Her Grace resides here or separately, Mr. Wren said as he read the final clause. Henry sat across the table, his hands still. They do. And whether the marriage is reconciled or not, Letitia added. Henry looked at her. The truth cost him, but he did not look away. Yes. She signed only after reading the amendment twice through her lorgnette. Henry signed afterward. Outside that room, the inquiry advanced with the same discipline. The red-edged prompt book remained in the Theatre Royal Archive. The original wardrobe ledger remained in the wardrobe office. Mr. Wren possessed only the attested extracts. The torn crimson Q leaf stayed inside the fresh packet sealed after the comparison, with the signatures of Mr. Wren, the theatre manager, and the prompter crossing the fold. The black coat marked 17 arrived from Kingswell under a memorandum of delivery signed by the steward and the coachman who transported it. It was locked in the theatre wardrobe room beside the keeper's desk. The anonymous French letter, Godfrey's English draft, Ursula's hush offer, the banker's extract, and Hale's sworn deposition remained under Mr. Wren's custody. Henry's military packet was opened only far enough for dates and movements to be verified. No private letter was read. Once the chronology had been attested, Mr. Wren returned the packet to Henry, who placed it inside his locked dispatch box. You could have kept a copy of every page, Henry told him. That would defeat the promise, Mr. Wren replied. The chronology is evidence. The private words are not. Henry accepted the distinction without argument. He also sent written instructions to Kingswell Park and the Theatre Royal stating that no servant, wardrobe keeper, prompter, stagehand, clerk, or footman who had given evidence was to lose employment, wages, lodging, or recommendation through any member of House Hawkridge. The order named no hero. It simply removed the threat. Letitia learned of it from the theatre manager, not from Henry. She noticed that too. On the 14th of June, Henry brought her a draft of his public correction. He placed it on her desk and stepped back. I've removed the passage Mr. Pelham suggested. Letitia read the page. It acknowledged the coercion surrounding their marriage, the staged intrusion, the false statement, and Henry's failure to protect her from suspicion. It did not call him honorable for confessing. It did not mention the appointment he had surrendered. His title appeared only where necessary to identify him. You removed your name from the closing sentence, she said. It originally said that the Duke of Farringdon accepted full responsibility. That sounded like a man arranging applause for admitting fault. And now? Now it says what happened to you. Letitia looked up. Henry stood several feet away, waiting as though her answer might close another door. I'll revise 2 phrases, she said. The marriage did not merely occur under pressure. It was secured through financial coercion. Use those words. Society won't like them. Society didn't bear them. She lowered her eyes before he could see how deeply the answer reached. On the evening of the 15th of June, the Theatre Royal subscription saloon stood empty except for Letitia and Henry. Tomorrow it would hold noble subscribers, theatre officers, selected press witnesses, Mr. Wren, and a magistrate prepared to receive sworn information. Tonight, only the rehearsal lamps burned. 3 bells would be used in the morning to summon the company before the doors opened. The silence felt different from the silence at Kingswell. Nothing waited behind it. Letitia stood near the long table where the prompt book would be displayed. "After tomorrow, you may decide you have done enough," Henry said. "For the inquiry. For the marriage." She turned toward him. "You think I returned because the evidence required it?" "I know you did." "And you think I may leave again?" "You may." He spoke the words without attempting to make them painless. The amended settlement remains. The retraction remains. Your work remains yours. I won't ask you to reward me for finally keeping a promise. Letitia touched the black ribbon at her waist. "Then why are you here?" "Because I love the woman I failed, and I'm trying to become someone who can hear her answer without deciding it for her." Her breath caught, but he did not move closer. He had not dressed the declaration in ceremony. He had not asked for one in return. "I'm not ready to answer that tonight," she said. "I know. But I don't want you to misunderstand my silence." "Then tell me what it means." Letitia crossed the space between them. "It means truth comes first. The marriage may earn what remains." Henry's eyes held hers. "That is more than I deserve." "Stop deciding what you deserve. Listen to what I choose." He went still. She lifted one hand and touched his face, feeling the restrained surprise in the line of his jaw. Henry did not lean into her palm until she allowed it. "May I kiss you?" he asked. "Yes." The kiss was gentle, deliberate, and brief at first. Letitia drew back only far enough to see whether he would follow without invitation. He did not. She touched his face again and kissed him a second time, freely and without witness. The warmth between them carried no claim, only recognition. When they parted, Henry rested his forehead lightly against hers. "Thank you," he whispered. "Don't thank me for choosing. Then I'll remember it." Footsteps approached from the corridor. Mr. Wren entered with Cuthbert Hale beside him. Hale's face had lost all theatrical polish. "Lady Ursula has another letter," he said. "It carries His Grace's signature. She says it proves the Duke ordered the scene and the Duchess helped invent the scandal." Henry's expression hardened. "How do you know?" "Mr. Vale showed it to me before the wedding." "I thought it was real." Hale looked at Letitia. "There's a note in the margin. 2 words. 3rd bell." Letitia's hand closed around the lorgnette. The same notation marked the crimson Q leaf. The same Q had governed the actor's entrance. "Where is the letter now?" Mr. Wren asked. "Lady Ursula will bring it tomorrow. She intends to make me deny my deposition before the subscribers." Hale swallowed. "She thinks the signature will destroy everything else." Letitia looked toward the darkened stage beyond the saloon doors. "Then tomorrow she'll learn the difference between a signature and a truth." 3 rehearsal bells rang through the Theatre Royal on the morning of the 16th of June, and by the time the last vibration faded, every person in the subscription saloon understood that the sound had been chosen for a reason. Letitia stood at the head of the long table with her silver lorgnette resting against the black ribbon at her waist. Henry stood to her right, half a pace behind. Mr. Wren occupied the opposite end beside a magistrate who had agreed to receive sworn information, not to turn the saloon into a court. Noble subscribers filled the front rows. The theatre manager, prompter, wardrobe keeper, selected press witnesses, Ursula, Rufus, Godfrey, and Cuthbert Hale faced one another beneath the chandeliers. Letitia did not begin with accusation. "This room isn't a court," she said. "No one here will be convicted by applause or rescued by rank. We're here to identify the source of the objects, records, and false statements used to disgrace my husband and me." Mr. Wren placed the resealed packet containing the crimson Q leaf upon the table. The signatures of the theatre manager, the prompter, and Mr. Wren still crossed the fold. He showed the unbroken seal to the magistrate, then opened it. The prompter brought the red-edged prompt book from the theatre archive. He set it beside the fragment without surrendering custody. The torn fibers met. The black ink stroke continued across the break. The Q sequence placed the missing leaf between the second and third bells. It came from this book, the prompter said. The wardrobe keeper then identified the black evening coat marked 17, which had been transferred from Kingswell under a signed memorandum and locked in the theatre wardrobe room. His original ledger remained in his hands. The entry showed the coat issued to Cuthbert Hale through a man calling himself Mr. Vale, who had presented Lord Rufus Hawkridge's card. Rufus smiled without warmth. A card can be borrowed. So can a coat, Letitia replied. That is why we have not stopped at either. Mr. Wren produced the attested extract showing Godfrey's request for access to rehearsal materials. Letitia opened the locked case brought from her workroom and removed the recovered folios of the midnight prints. Their corrections were hers. Their cut edges matched the numbered stubs remaining at Falkner Lodge. Godfrey lifted his chin. I handled the sale. That was never concealed. You concealed the pages, Letitia said. Then you used my name to enter the archive after telling me every draft had been returned. Mr. Wren laid the original anonymous French letter beside Godfrey's English draft. The uncommon phrase appeared in both. A respectable marriage must close the curtain upon suspicion. Bell and Vane's attested ledger extract showed that the same numbered batch of quarto paper and violet sealing powder had been purchased by Ursula's London agent and delivered to Godfrey's clerk on the 11th of May. The watermark matched the original letter. The banker's extract traced money from Ursula's agent to Godfrey, then to the theatrical intermediary. Ursula remained seated. Household payments passed through many hands. Not usually with a staged intrusion at the end of them, Letitia said. Mr. Wren unfolded Ursula's hush offer. Its closing line repeated the same image. Close the curtain upon this unfortunate suspicion. Hale stepped forward and confirmed his sworn deposition. He described the rehearsal, the chalk mark, Godfrey's corrections, Rufus's instructions, and the forged order used by Rufus's valet to free him through the laundry passage. You were promised consideration for cooperation, Rufus said. Hale looked toward the magistrate. I was promised that my words would be written as I gave them. That's all. You're a paid actor. Yes. That is how I recognized when I was being handed a part. A few subscribers shifted. Godfrey turned on Rufus. The card was yours. The valet was yours. Rufus answered, the draft was in your possession. The initials on the Q leaf were yours. Ursula's expression did not change. This is precisely what happens when servants and tradesmen are invited to interpret private family business. Letitia held her gaze. Then perhaps we should examine the private family letter you brought. Ursula rose and placed a folded sheet upon the table. Henry's signature appeared at the bottom. The letter stated that he had ordered the masked performance so that Letitia could expose it publicly and end the rumor surrounding him. A murmur moved through the room. One press witness leaned closer. The signature was excellent. Even Henry's face hardened when he saw it. That resembles mine, he said. It is yours, Ursula replied. You cannot protect your wife by denying every document that inconveniences her. For the first time that morning, uncertainty touched the room. The layered proof on the table seemed to tilt beneath one convincing signature. Letitia did not defend herself at once. She lifted the lorgnette and studied the margin. Two small words appeared beside the final paragraph. Third bell. Her pulse steadied. Mr. Pritchard, she said to the prompter, is that a private notation? He leaned over the page. No, Your Grace. It is a stage cue. The hand is the same form used on the torn leaf. Mr. Wren compared the paper with the stationer's attested description. It belongs to the same Bell and Vane batch as the anonymous French letter. Henry looked more closely at the signature. It was copied from a dispatch I signed last winter. That dispatch passed through the Falkner Trust papers when Godfrey prepared an account concerning military subscriptions. Godfrey stepped back. I copied nothing. Then you will explain why the theatrical cue sits beside Henry's name, Letitia said. Ursula's calm thinned. A copied notation proves no more than a copied signature. Then answer 3 questions. Letitia moved from behind the table. If this marriage was only a deception, why did you require the wedding announcement to reach the ministry before the ceremony? If you wished only to protect Henry's reputation, why did your agent pay for a scene designed to cause separation? And why did Mr. Hale hear you say the marriage must fail before I could give Henry a son? Rufus turned toward his mother. Godfrey looked at the floor. Ursula remained silent too long. Then she said, I protected the succession from a coerced and unsuitable union. The words fell without drama, but their meaning struck every person in the room. Letitia did not look away. You needed the ceremony to preserve Henry's political usefulness. You needed the marriage destroyed before a legitimate son could displace Rufus. You had known him for days. That gave you no right to decide what our marriage might become. Ursula's fan snapped shut. You were a penniless translator lifted into a duchy. And that is why you believed no one would ask who owned the words you stole. Rufus began to blame Godfrey. Godfrey protested that Rufus had arranged the witnesses and the escape. Neither denial survived the records already before the magistrate. He instructed both men to remain for formal examination and directed that the second forged letter be taken into custody. Hale received no immunity. His cooperation was entered into the record. Henry then stepped forward. He did not stand in front of Letitia. The original rumor concerned a deceased officer whom I chose to protect, he said. His private letters will not be produced. The chronology already verified proves the later correspondence false. He looked toward the press witnesses. My marriage began under financial coercion. My wife exposed a staged intrusion designed to ruin her. I then signed a statement that protected my ambition by leaving her to bear suspicion alone. That was cowardice. I withdrew from the appointment before I knew whether she would forgive me. No one interrupted. Mr. Wren handed the printed retraction and attested account to the press witnesses. The theatre manager stood. The corrected edition of the Midnight Prince will identify its translator as Letitia Hawkridge, Duchess of Farringdon. The wardrobe keeper and prompter bowed to her, not to Henry. The applause began at the rear, uncertain at first, then strong enough to fill the saloon. Letitia did not mistake it for justice. Justice was the magistrate retaining the forged letter. Justice was the prior instruction from Henry and the estate trustees removing Rufus from every estate office, discretionary allowance, household privilege, and unentailed patronage while leaving hereditary succession to the law. Justice was Mr. Wren's chancery application for Godfrey's removal from active trust. Justice was Ursula losing the right to use House Hawkridge for London patronage. The applause was only acknowledgement, and for once it belonged to the correct woman. In the anteroom afterward, Henry stopped several feet from Letitia. You may still live separately, he said. Nothing signed in your favor depends upon today. I know. I love you, Letitia. His voice held no demand. She crossed the distance herself. I love you, Henry. That's why I require the truth from you. She put her arms around him, and he held her only after she had chosen the embrace. Then she lifted her face and kissed him. When they parted, he asked quietly, "Where is home?" Letitia looked toward the saloon where printers were already copying her name correctly. First, she said, I want to see what they put on the title page. 6 weeks later, on the morning of the 28th of July, Henry placed a newly bound volume beside Letitia's breakfast plate and did not open it for her. Sunlight rested across the white cloth, the silver coffee service, and the black ribbon from which her lorgnette hung. Farringdon House had learned new habits during those 6 weeks. Letters addressed to Letitia arrived sealed and remained so. Invitations bearing her name waited in her workroom until she approved them. No secretary copied her correspondence. No servant reported where she had gone unless she had ordered a carriage or failed to return at the expected hour. Most importantly, Henry now knocked before entering any room she used as her own, even when the door stood open. He had knocked that morning and waited until she said, "Come in." Only then had he carried the book to the table. Letitia looked at the dark green binding. "You've seen it?" "Only the cover." "You resisted opening a book placed in your own library." "It isn't my book." The answer still had the power to surprise her. She lifted the volume and opened to the title page. The Midnight Prince. Translated by Letitia Hawkridge, Duchess of Farringdon. No anonymous lady. No intermediary. No suggestion that Sir Godfrey Tracell had improved, supervised, or arranged the work. Her name stood alone beneath the title. Letitia read it twice through the silver lenses, though the print was clear. The first time she saw proof. The second time she saw restitution. Henry remained standing. He did not ask whether she was pleased. He waited. "They used the exact credit I requested," she said. "The theatre manager refused every alteration." "At your instruction?" "At yours." "Then he has excellent judgment." Henry's mouth softened. He said something similar. Letitia closed the book and rested one hand upon it. "Sit down, Henry." He took the chair opposite her. The distance between them no longer felt defensive. It was simply space in which both could breathe. Letitia lived at Farringdon House because she had chosen to remain, not because the amended settlement required it. Falkner Lodge remained protected, its accounts now overseen by independent trustees. She could return there whenever she wished. Her workroom at Farringdon House belonged to her alone. The locked case containing her recovered folios stood in its cabinet, and only she carried the key. Henry had never asked for a copy. He had once requested permission to read a new translation, then accepted without complaint when she told him it was unfinished. 2 days later, she had found him in the breakfast room attempting to translate a French theatre notice by himself. His errors had been grave enough to make her laugh. "You've made the actor announce his own funeral," she had told him. Henry had examined the page. "That may improve the production." Now he poured coffee for them both. "The benefit performance begins at 8, he said. "The theatre manager has sent the final list of guests." "Did you read it?" "Only the names on my invitation." "And mine." "I left it on your desk." Ordinary restraint had become the strongest proof of change. Grand sacrifices could be made once beneath public pressure. Respect had to be chosen every morning. The consequences of the conspiracy had continued beyond the applause in the subscription saloon. Rufus remained heir presumptive under the law, but every estate office, discretionary allowance, household privilege, and unentailed patronage had been removed. He now waited for the assizes under conditions set by the magistrate, no longer able to command a Hawkridge servant or spend a guinea through Henry's household. Sir Godfrey had been suspended from active control of the Falkner Trust while Chancery examined his accounts. Restitution had begun, though Mr. Wren warned that careful recovery required patience. Lady Ursula had withdrawn to a remote dower house after London hostesses ceased accepting invitations bearing her seal. She had not written to Letitia again. Cuthbert Hale had received no pardon. His cooperation had been entered into the record, and the theatre manager had found him modest employment while the authorities considered the weight of his testimony. Henry's diplomatic appointment had gone to another man. He had made no attempt to recover it. The red-edged prompt book remained in the Theatre Royal Archive. The original wardrobe ledger remained in its office. The anonymous French letter, Godfrey's English draft, the resealed Q leaf, Ursula's hush offer, the second forged letter, and Hale's sworn deposition rested in Mr. Wren's legal packet or with the magistrate as required. The black coat numbered 17 had been returned to the theatre after written leave from the magistrate, once its description, identification, and transfer had been attested. Martin Say's private letters had never been opened before the public. Henry's military packet was locked once more inside his dispatch box. The dead had not been turned into spectacle for the comfort of the living. Letitia touched the title page again. I want to bring this copy tonight. It belongs there. Not in the Duke's box. Henry looked at her. Where, then? Backstage first. The prompter, wardrobe keeper, and company should see it before society does. Then we go through the stage door. You'll ruin several people's expectations. I am learning to enjoy that. At 8 that evening, the Theatre Royal shone beneath rows of lamps. Carriages filled the street, and noble patrons crowded the entrance beneath the portico. Letitia and Henry arrived in the Farringdon carriage, but they did not enter through the doors reserved for subscribers. At Letitia's request, they went around to the stage door. The same corridor that had smelled of oil, dust, and old paint on the 2nd of June now carried the quick energy of a company preparing to perform. The prompter met them near the wings. The wardrobe keeper stood beside the black coat numbered 17, restored to its proper place on a labeled peg. No one wore it that night. Letitia presented the corrected edition to the theatre manager. He opened it before the company and read her name aloud. Applause rose from actors, dressers, stagehands, and clerks, people who understood better than society how easily the name behind a performance could disappear. Letitia bowed to them without false modesty. The work survived because several people kept honest records, she said. I would like the prompt book, the wardrobe ledger, and the company's evidence remembered with the translation. The manager nodded. They will be. Only then did Letitia and Henry enter the Duke's box. She walked beside him, not behind. When the audience saw her, a movement passed through the theatre. People rose. Some had whispered against her at the subscription gathering. Some had repeated the pamphlet. Some had withdrawn cards. Tonight they stood because the corrected title page had been printed, the retraction had circulated, and the conspiracy had become fact rather than rumor. Letitia accepted the acknowledgement without mistaking it for absolution. Applause could recognize justice. It could not create it. During the interval, the theatre manager invited her onto the stage. Henry remained in the box until she looked back and held out her hand. He joined her only then. Letitia stood with the prompter, wardrobe keeper, manager, and company while the audience heard her name announced once more. Henry did not speak. He did not make her restoration a chapter in his redemption. He simply stood where she had invited him. After the final curtain, the theatre emptied slowly. Lamps dimmed along the galleries. The company withdrew backstage, and the last patrons disappeared into waiting carriages. Letitia and Henry remained alone in the silent auditorium. She rested her silver lorgnette upon the velvet rail and folded its double lenses closed. Once, she had used it to discover what other people concealed. It had shown her stage gum beneath a mask, a wardrobe number inside a cuff, a cue written in the margin of a forged letter, and the careful shapes of men's lies. Tonight she did not need it to study Henry's face. Are you ready to go home? He asked. Letitia looked across the darkened rows, then toward the stage where her stolen words had finally returned under her name. Yes, she said. This time I know who wrote the answer. She turned to him, placed one hand against his cheek, and kissed him by her own choice. Henry received the kiss without taking more than she gave. When they parted, Letitia picked up the lorgnette and slipped the black ribbon over her wrist. She had not abandoned the instrument that helped her survive. She had simply ceased needing it as armor within her marriage. Together they left the box and walked toward the stage door, side by side, while behind them the final curtain descended beneath the fading footlights.